Welcome, people of Georgina and people interested in Georgina. This is the YourTown Georgina podcast. It's wonderful to have you here with us, and I say us because, of course, Ben is never too far away. Hi, Ben. How have you been?
Not bad, Rob. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I mean, at the risk of time stamping this episode, because we're not exactly sure when it's going to come out. We're into the new year here. We got a little bit of momentum. I, like probably many other people, started a little bit slow. I took a more casual approach as we entered into 2024, but it feels like we're picking up steam and kind of falling back into the routines.
Yeah, same thing here. It kind of feels like we've been in the new year for a while now, even though we really haven't. But yeah, we're back into the routines and continuing on.
Well, yeah, good to hear. And I know it's always a little bit of a loaded question, and to sort of peel back the layers a little bit more on you, Ben. You've got a 2-year-old hitting his stride at home, and a 3-month-old now as well.
A 3-month-old, and constantly hitting his stride at every chance he gets. So it's a busy house. It wasn't. I wouldn't say the holidays were the most restful. I'll say that.
Well, so a little bit of a respite here in the quiet confines of our YourTown Georgina podcast studio.
Very much.
Right. Good to hear. Well, Ben, do you know what the focus of today's podcast is?
No, I'm afraid I don't.
How about I give you a hint? It's referenced in both the Town of Georgina logo and in the YourTown Georgina podcast logo.
I think I may know now.
Okay, what do you think? Throw a dart at the wall.
Could it be the lake?
Nailed it. Well done. Maybe that was too easy, actually. But this episode focuses on what for many represents the, capital T-H-E, pride of our town, and that is the lake. Lake Simcoe, to be specific. Now, on our last podcast, I shed some light into how our family came to live in Georgina, and I'm going to be 100% honest. Despite all the nice things we can say about living in this town, I can say confidently that the lake is what brought us here permanently back in 1984. Now, this is a big topic, so we'll certainly spend more time on the lake in future podcasts, but we're going to get the ball rolling right here, right now. And it sounds funny to say with the modern commute and the expansion of Toronto, but Georgina used to be considered kind of far away. I still have people that'll refer to me as living up north, quote unquote, which I think is a bit disrespectful to those living in Orillia, Parry Sound, Sudbury, let alone Timmins or Nipigon. But let's just say that in the mid-'80s, Georgina was still kind of off the beaten path. And my parents didn't find it right away. They bounced around the area north of the city, even prospecting Musselman Lake, just southeast of here. But in the end, it was the shores of Cook's Bay that hooked them, and very possibly the western exposure. Now, I know we've got a lot of northern exposure in Georgina, but I'm biased when it comes to that west-facing view. In fact, the blurred-out image on our logo, lots of logo promotion today, is actually a sunset view from the home that I grew up in. Having had a beer or two in your backyard, Ben, I can say that the sunsets and the back roads can also be pretty spectacular.
They really can. Not quite lake level, but we do all right.
I mean, I do want to point out, though, we captured that in the podcast logo as well, right? That the fields there are actually inspired by Ben's place.
I didn't realize that. I appreciate that.
Well, we'll say that. We're going to say that now. Now, suffice it to say, the lake has, in many ways, defined my Georgina experience, and I know that many others feel the same way. So let's dive a little bit deeper. And that was a lake pun, Ben. Exasperated sighs. There'll be more of those, I'm sure. So I put on my student cap for this one and did a bit of research on the lake that we love. Now, of course, the lake has been here for thousands of years. It's actually a remnant of a much bigger prehistoric lake known as Lake Algonquin. And as the ice of the last ice age receded, it left a bunch of smaller lakes, including Lake Simcoe. Not always called that, of course. At one time, the Huron called it Urenterong. I mean, hopefully I got that pronunciation at least close, or beautiful water. Then, as was often the case, the Europeans arrived, and it eventually became what we know as Lake Simcoe, named in the 18th century by John Graves Simcoe in honor of his father, Captain John, an officer in the Royal Navy. So there you have it. Now, I said smaller, but it's actually the fourth largest lake in Ontario, being 30 kilometers long and 25 kilometers wide, and bordered by Simcoe County, Durham region, and of course, York region. Now, Ben, you're a Windsor native, a stone's throw from Detroit. And you know how Michigan looks like a hand with a mitten on it, and Michiganders will hold up their right hand to people, fingers aligned the same as a mitten, to point out where they live?
Yeah, except for those poor lost souls in the Upper Peninsula.
Right. They don't count.
They're
Well, I'm going to take your word for it. My Michigan geography is not quite as good as the Windsor native, I suspect. But let me try a little experiment with you. So you're going to let your left arm hang, and you're going to make a fist. Now, I want you to extend your thumb and your index finger. And there you have Lake Simcoe. Now, pretty cool, right?
Okay, yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop trying to explain to people where I live and just start pointing at my left index finger, and that should clear things up.
There it is. Yep.
Simple as that. So let's get to why this lake is awesome. And it has really nothing to do with the commercial activity, at least from my perspective, and everything to do with recreation. Now, growing up, I would constantly hear about its claim to fame. Specifically, if it was winter, well, you know it's the ice fishing capital of the world, don't you? And in the summertime, well, you know it's the windsurfing capital of North America, don't you? Now, that's just how I remember it. I have no idea who accredits lakes this way and if there were any decrees that made that official, but I can tell you, to use the ice fishing example, each winter I would look out the front window because the front of the house faces the water. Isn't that right, Ben?
So I've been told.
It's a point of debate.
It is, yeah.
All right, we'll take that one offline. But anyway, you could count on the fact that by mid-January, these temporary villages would pop up out on the lake. One hut, then 2, 10, 20. And as you drove along Lake Drive, one ice fishing community after another. And just like land dwellers, the odd loner separated from the rest, enjoying a bit more solitude. Now, make no mistake, Simcoe is a popular lake to fish in the summer months as well, but it would seem that it really makes its mark as an ice fishing destination. Of course, that's not the only thing that you see out there in the winter. Sleds, snowmobiles, that is, going from A to B or just out for a rip. DIY hockey rinks closer to the shores. Winter kite surfers taking advantage of that wind and seemingly defying the laws of physics. There's cross-country skiers getting it done, and other folks just out for a stroll. If it can be done on frozen water, people will do it on Simcoe. Then, when the ice is gone and the temperatures rise, well, where do we begin? Swimming, sailing, jet skiing, water skiing, poker runs, more kite surfing, but with a softer landing this time, canoeing, kayaking, paddleboarding, and if you go a bit closer to the west shores of Kempenfelt Bay, add regattas and scuba diving to the mix. But part of what makes the lake so great, and us so lucky to have it, is not just what you can do on it, but what you can do by it as well. Sitting on the dock, having a bonfire by the shore, going for a slow drive down Lake Drive, or having lunch or dinner at a restaurant overlooking the water like the beach, previously Orchard Beach, or maybe the Boondocks. Laying and playing on any of the sandy beaches between Keswick and Sutton, or just watching the sun go down in a red sky reflecting off the calm waters. Make no mistake about it, our town is anchored by the lake. It's a point of pride. So many of us build our lifestyles around it, depending on our interests, and its appeal extends well beyond the borders of Georgina. It's a major contributor to tourism in our town, and in that sense, the revenue generated benefits all residents regardless of your interest in lake activities. And I'll use that point as an opportunity to share a truth, and maybe some of you feel the same way. I'm guilty of taking the lake for granted at times. It's easy to do. When you don't know any different growing up, it's sometimes hard to step back and appreciate what you have. It wasn't until I entered adulthood and moved around for school and work and other things that I started to get clarity. While I was away, I was aware that something was missing, but I wasn't sure what it was. I thought maybe it's just that all those other places aren't home, and that's why they feel different. But slowly, what I believed to be a universal truth became apparent. Once you've spent a significant amount of time by the water, it becomes part of you, and it will always call you back when you leave. I don't think I can attribute it to just the view, the sound, or the smell. it's something bigger than the sum of its parts, and it's driven by the experiences, especially the shared experiences that create long-lasting memories. My earliest memory of the lake was a nighttime swim with my dad. It was one of those warm nights where the heat and humidity stays long after the sun has gone down. The lake is shallow at our waterfront, and we walked out together until we could swim comfortably. I was young, maybe 7 or 8 years old. And eventually, after splashing around and having fun, I got tired. Being too small to stand up and catch my breath, my dad took me in his arms and held me. The lake was perfectly calm, I remember. No wind, no clouds. And we chatted a bit about things that a 7 or 8-year-old likes to chat about. And when we looked up after a while, we fell silent. Even my chatty tongue was no match for the stars in the sky that night. It's one of my great memories. Now, don't get me wrong. Not all of my lake memories are so warm and positive. Care to hear an example, Ben?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you might. Okay, well, this falls into the category of me damaging and or destroying things of my dad's as a kid.
I've heard a few of those stories.
Yeah. Honestly, that could be a podcast on its own. Now, usually these stories are car related. This one is about the boat and a particular birthday many years ago. We were having fun down by the water. The bonfire was lit, and again, the stars were out. It seemed like a great time for a stealth mission, which is a really cool term we use for taking the boat out at night. And me and my pal suggested the idea to our female acquaintances, and they liked the idea. Now, the details of the actual boat ride are not all that eventful and not really worth sharing. We had a nice little ride, and we put the boat away and went back to the party, and the night carried on. Now, it wasn't until the next morning that I sensed something was wrong. I sat down at the kitchen table to eat my breakfast, and looking out the kitchen window, I could see my next-door neighbor explaining something to my dad. It was all pretty calm at first, and then I saw the familiar side of my dad throwing his arms up in exasperation or frustration. I've seen it many times. The hope that what they were talking about had nothing to do with me was a delusion. There's no other word for it. My dad came inside, skipped saying good morning, and went right to, "What the hell did you do to the boat cover?" Now, my default response was always, "Nothing," followed by a sheepish, "Why?" "Because it's all torn to shreds," was his reply. "Well, what makes you think it was me?" was the fair question I replied with. "Well, did you take the boat out last night?" was his question. Uh-huh. "Well, you ruined the boat cover." I really wanted to be defensive, Ben, but I know from experience to pick my battles. Also, I clearly needed to do some investigative work before arguing my case.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a good approach.
Now, so I went down to the boat to find out for myself, and it was in the clear light of day that I noticed something I hadn't noticed the night before. The cover was completely unbuttoned from the boat, all except for the very back. Now, a point I clearly missed in the darkness. Now, as you know, Ben, it's pretty shallow at our waterfront, so I had to trim the prop up, and I cruised out slowly into Cook's Bay the previous evening. And when we got to deeper waters, I obviously trimmed down and picked up the pace a little bit, at which point I can only assume the 21-foot-long custom tarp unraveled from the ski deck at the back and was flying in the wind like a giant beige cape, which amazingly was missed by everyone in the boat. I suppose our eyes were forward, which makes sense.
Yeah, good place for them to be. Yeah.
So when it came time to come back to shore, I brought the prop back up. Of course, we don't want to damage the prop in the shallow return to the dock, during which time I proceeded to chop the boat cover into a million pieces. A point also missed by everyone. And then I even did a nice little 180 maneuver to park the boat, bow out to the incoming waves. Again, you see how important protecting the boat was to me. Anyway, I hopped on the dock and walked right by my new spaghetti tarp, again, unseen by all. Pretty impressive, eh, Ben?
Very, and I find it funny you didn't try to put the top back on at the end of the ride.
Well, I'm sure in the moment that seemed like a task best left till later on, or perhaps in the morning. But tell me you've got stories like this.
Not necessarily boat related. I did used to spend a lot of time on boats, sailboats, but I can't say I ever damaged any sails. I mean, no props, so it was a lot harder to do, I suppose. But I've got other stories that that could match that.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to dig deeper on those as this podcast kind of evolves in future episodes. But funny enough, I remember telling the story a number of years ago to a new friend, and he was equally impressed as you, Ben, that I could do something like this. But also pointed out that we all do some silly stuff when we're young. He said, I mean, after all, what were you, 16, 17? And I quickly responded with, no, this was last fall. It was my 30th birthday party.
Oh, so the plot thickens. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. This is, I guess this is a bit of a self-degradation podcast as well, Ben. So I'm just going to take it on the chin.
Fair enough.
Now, Ben, I would be remiss if I didn't get your take. After all, one of the nice things about our dynamic as a team here is that I was raised in Georgina, and you've chosen to make it your home as an adult. So I'm curious to know, in the years since you've moved to Georgina, is there a memory or an experience, maybe a favorite thing to do that involves the lake and stands out for you?
Well, I've had a lot of great times at your dad's place on the lake, which is always wonderful. But I got to say, some of my favorite memories of the lake are sometimes survival, going back to my kids, and any parent with young kids will understand this one. When they're young, they love car rides, and they tend to fall asleep during car rides. So you'll pretty regularly see myself or my wife or both of us with our kids in our car, just taking that nice cruise down the lake, alongside the lake at the posted speed limit, and gives the kids a little bit of peace, lets them rest. We get to enjoy some scenery and get a moment of reprieve.
Wow, great point. And I'm just a few years ahead of you in terms of the parenting. Let's just put it that way. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, for me, I live on Church Street, and we did exactly the same thing as many parents do. We need a bit of a reprieve, and just the vibration of the car, the movement is sometimes all it takes to get a little break. But, selfishly, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go down to the bottom of Church Street and pick up Lake Drive there and, maybe get a little bit of a recharge, some solitude, some reflection of my own.
I won't lie. I mean, Rob, I have a little old British sports car, and those drives predate the kids because my wife and I would just hop in our little MG and just take a nice cruise, and those are some fond memories as well. I totally get that.
Well, today, while I don't have to lull my children to sleep anymore, when it's time to hop on the motorcycle, I can tell you about 80-90% of the kilometers logged on that bike are that exact same drive. So it never leaves you.
It's a great drive.
Well, thanks for that, Ben. Allow me to circle back to my point. The lake, it's part of Georgina's DNA. The two are inseparable. Lake Simcoe is part of our past and our present. It's part of our future. It both literally and figuratively shapes our town. And even if the lake is not the main thing that brought you here, spend enough time in Georgina and you'll find it becomes part of your DNA. The lake starts to orientate you, whether you realize it or not. And when you leave, you feel a pull back. Even if you're 5,000 kilometers away for 5 years like I was. I had to come home because, to quote Bernadette Connors, I see myself in the water.
I see myself in the water. I see myself in the water.
Well, it's time to introduce our guest for this episode. I wanted to get the outside perspective and perhaps a more official perspective on the importance of the lake to our town, and I think we snagged a good one. Not only is this guest very relevant to our discussion, he's also our first town councillor. Well, I'm talking about none other than Ward 3 councillor for the town of Georgina, Dave Neeson. Now, Dave is currently serving his third term on Georgina's Municipal Council, and for those who haven't brushed up on their ward boundaries, Ward 3 is essentially everything north of Pollock Road and then Church Street in Keswick, and everything west of McCowan. Now, beyond his work as a councillor, Dave has been actively contributing to the community for many years. I'll paraphrase a little from his bio on the town website. Prior to being elected, Dave was continuously promoting the rights of seniors and disabled persons in the community. He holds more than 20 years of experience in municipal government through his work with the Public Health Department at York Region. And I have it on good authority that Dave is an avid supporter of local conservation efforts, which is just one reason why I think he makes a great guest for this episode. Here we go. All right. Well, Dave, welcome to the YourTown, Georgina podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, I'm being kind of informal, calling you Dave right off the bat, but in full transparency, I mean, we have crossed paths once or twice in social settings. I hope you don't mind if we keep it informal. Dave works?
No, that's perfect. I love it. Love it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, regular Dave, man. Titles are too pretentious.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Dave. Well, I'm going to stick to protocol, and we need to do just a little bit of background. Now, specifically, I know that you live with your family in Willow Beach,
right.
a place that I have a lot of great memories in, and I'm hoping that you can share with us how you came to make Georgina your home.
Yeah, for sure. Good question. So, I mean, I spent an awful lot of time here, as a child, if I could. I mean, my sister was living here at one point, and I would come up quite a bit, to go fishing, that sort of thing. And like everybody else that, is still happening here today. And, your parents would bring you up to the lake in the summer, you go swimming, all this kind of thing. And so, and of course, as I get a little bit older, in the teenage years, now you want to start going fishing, you want to go out ice fishing, geez, how cool is it to walk on a frozen lake?
Yeah, I know very well.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so, so I had a really great intro, that way for sure. And then, similar to a lot of people, so I came up here in the early 2000s. And, quite honestly, Georgina was the only affordable place, even at those times. Like now we're here in 24, of course. And, the affordability crisis is completely out of control.
A little different now, yeah.
Yeah, like, I hate to say like, whoa me, going back to the early 2000s. But, like most people, I was from Richmond Hill, pardon me, and living there at the time, and was never going to get past a rental. And quite frankly, as much, I have to be honest, I love my hometown. I'm not really fond of going back there, given, how busy it is as compared to, the lifestyle here. But,
sure.
But just simply looking at the numbers, it was never going to work, even in those days with pricing. And so, that brought myself and my wife here, and I'll forever be thankful that we did. It's nothing I would ever give up. And as I say, it's kind of funny, of course, we're going to talk about Lake Simcoe and being our identity and all that sort of stuff. But it's so funny is, for someone like me, you get south of Green Lane and the blood pressure just rises.
You're not alone in that. You're not alone in that. I've got a couple of buddies and we joke about, they can't leave the 905. Like they say 905, but it's really more like Bloomington would be a big road trip. Let's put it that.
For sure. Right? You hit the traffic and the amount of people and the congestion and, societally things change a little bit. People don't hold the door for each other's in all places. It's just very different, right?
Oh, that's well said. And I think that that's a kind of a common experience. I talked to a lot of people that end up here based on earlier childhood experiences or just things that happened younger in life that kind of stuck with them and said, if we're going to plant roots somewhere, I think I know the place, Georgina.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, the other big attraction too, it's York region, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Lake Simcoe is a relatively big place, you've got Simcoe County, et cetera, and, Barrie, Aurelia, as major urban centers, but, but this is still in York region.
Yeah.
And York region is a wonderful place to be. Now, Georgina is obviously the best. You and I are 100% going to.
Of course we know that.
We know that. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's another big thing. It's in York region, right? And, as we've seen now, nothing that you or I ever wanted to happen, you see the values in terms of your investment, through living here.
Sure.
We never really wanted to get to the point where we are. It's the point where it's, excluding other people from having a home.
Yeah.
But there's a big attraction there as well, given it is York region, right? Wonderful services we have here, in that regional government system. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think of it as, I used to think of it as one of the best kept secrets in York region. It's not so well kept anymore.
Yeah. We're the cat's kind of out of the bag now.
That's it.
Yeah.
Hey, lots to enjoy, right? Lots for people to enjoy. Now, okay, so I'd like to ask one more background question. And I have a bit of a public sector background myself with some local experience at the board and committee level. I can tell you that I have a lot of respect for certainly the career public servants, but also a great deal of respect for those who throw their hats into the electoral arena, especially at the municipal level. I know what kind of time commitment it is and the hard work that's involved. And it can at times be a thankless job, but also very rewarding, I'm sure. sure. Most importantly, I respect the fact that, at least based on the conversations I've had, that those who serve on town council do so out of a genuine interest to support our town and those who live here. So first of all, Dave, thanks for that.
Thank you.
I'd also like to know, how did the decision come about to run for town council in the first place? I mentioned in our little preamble, now in your third term.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and thanks for that. And thank you for the compliment. It's that means a lot. And I know little off topic, but I know also, with respect to what you're doing here on the show, and these are really valuable community services, and really build up the community that we're also proud to be a part of. And so kudos to you as well, and of course for your service on the library board. And I'm missing something
Property
else too.
Standards Committee was on for a couple of terms as well, and more to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, guaranteed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So thank you as well. Yeah. The former councillor, my predecessor, which it seems like yesterday, but it's sort of funny that it'll be 12 years here at the end of this term of council here. But former councillor Slossie, he, I had a ton of respect for Dave. I'm going to call him that as well. It's his first name, Dave Slossie, and his family, his wife Loretta, and the amount that they've contributed here to the local community, especially here in Ward 3, and of course in the larger context of the town. I had an awful lot of respect for him, and I got to know him through some organized labor circles, also involved in sort of my past and my history in the organized labor movement. And I've always enjoyed volunteering and helping other people, and that's always been a calling for me. And, I guess it also leads into why I'm a public servant outside of my role here at the town. But yeah, elevator pitch here. Dave came to me one day and just said, "Listen, man, I think you'd be great for this role." And he had let me know confidentially at the time. He said, "Listen, I'm going to be, retiring and moving on to some other endeavors he had at the time, and he had a long public service here at the town." He gave me the tap on the shoulder, if you will.
Yeah.
And I sort of went, "There's no way this guy is serious. Like, he can't be serious." And I thought, okay. So I said, "Geez, Councillor Slossie, really appreciate that," and all those kind words. And, this was probably, 8 months before the end of his term. And I thought, well, we'll see. I don't think this is something that's real. And, I didn't raise it with my wife at all. I just, went home, didn't think any more of it. And then, I think it was the night of, he was going to announce live at council. He calls me at like 4:00 in the afternoon, and he's going to be making a speech. Here. Yeah, he's making a speech at 7:00. The council meets at 7. He's like, "Hey, Dave, listen, it's game time here. Are you in? I'm going to, I'd really like to tell the community that, I've got some respect for you and I believe you're the right person to lead this community. And I want to endorse you here at 7:00.
We need a Dave in Ward 3. And it's just, I think you're the guy."
I'm like, "What is going on?" No, I'm like, "Dude, I hadn't even thought of this in 6 months." It was, and okay. And I'm even sighing now thinking I had so much anxiety. I said, okay. And I just thought, look, this is not something I ever thought I could do. Don't even know if I'm capable. I know I have the work ethic, all of those things. I know I can learn, I can build relationships, all that stuff. But I thought, if this is ever something that there's a potential of being successful at, this is the prime opportunity. And so, I just thought in my own mind, I'll never know if I don't do it. And so I just sort of thought, what? There's obviously no guarantee of success, but I'm the type of person, I won't do anything unless it's at 100 miles an hour. I don't half commit. And so I thought, I can commit at this time, where I was in life. And so I thought, let's just do it and we'll see where it lands. And here we are.
Here we are in the third term. Who would have thought at that time that Dave called you that you'd be sitting here now in your third term, reminiscing and thinking back?
Yeah, it's funny. All of a sudden, you're like, you're one of the veterans on council all of a sudden now, and it's like, I got this white hair going. Like,
wait, that's from serving on town council exclusively?
Oh, guaranteed. Yeah. Well, I think you get some of yours in the beard.
I got a little bit, just even from the committee level, so I can appreciate that.
Guaranteed. Yeah, so. I know you did, especially property standards.
Right.
100%. Yeah.
Well, for sure. I appreciate that, Dave. It's great to have that context, and thanks again for the service, and of course for being here. Now, speaking of being here on the YourTown Georgina podcast, this episode, as you know, is about the lake, and obviously I want to talk a little bit more about that. It's a topic that I know that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Now, can I ask you, just simply put, how do you see the role the lake plays in the Georgina experience?
Yeah, I'll repeat what I said. I'm really fortunate to be on the TVO, the agenda show with Steve Paikin, and that was quite an honor. And what I had said there, and quite frankly, Mayor Quirk reminds folks is that You know, to me, the lake is our identity here. You know, as you said, you know, we're this sort of special gem, you know, here within York Region. And so, you know, it really defines us. I think most people here would agree. It's the lake. It's who we are, you know, whether it's, you know, of course we have there's a First Nation community here and, you know, they've been here, let's face it, since time immemorial, right?
Of course, yeah.
And, you know, we're fortunate to be sharing the land with them, but, you know, without Lake Simcoe, the community doesn't exist. You know, whether it's access to safe, clean drinking water, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I think it really defines us. And of course, you know, just simple little things like we spoke about before, recreational opportunities, the memories you build. You build as a child, going out in the lake, going out in the ice fishing, Ontario's ice fishing capital, you know, all of those sorts of things, going out boating, whatever it is that, you know, you enjoy. Maybe it's just swimming or kayaking. There's so many cool things about the lake, you know, whether it sustains us human beings, of course, being the drinking water.
Sure.
And, you know, or whether it's our recreational opportunities, you know, I think that's what it is for sure.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, everything that you described is a big part of why I love living in this town. And I talked a little bit about it in my very first episode. You know, I'd gone away for a while, went to school in Victoria, BC, and I realized at that time that I was maybe taking it for granted a little bit where we live. I got used to it a little bit, and it wasn't until I was gone for a sustained period of time that I really. I realized how much I missed that. I even addressed that in the preamble to this interview a little bit. And I realized that it's not only what defines the town, but in a lot of ways, it's what defines kind of who I am. I'm kind of a lake guy. I'm a lake kid, all right? This is where I grew up, and it's now part of my DNA.
Yeah, it's so funny. That's what I was going to say. It's in your DNA, you know?
Yeah.
Many people would agree with that for sure.
Yeah. Well, let me I think that we're very lucky because we can speak to this experience as residents of Georgina. But how important is lake tourism, and how does that benefit us as residents of Georgina?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I mean, it's you know, I guess it depends what your interest is, you know, but the thing with Lake Simcoe, there's so many great stories all around. So, you know, if economic development and tourism is sort of, you know, your thing with respect to economic activity, you know, as per the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, you know, the watershed generates just about $923 million annually.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
That's amazing.
It's super substantial, right? You know, when you can sort of quantify that, and, you know, that's only continuing to build. So, you know, that's on the economic side, but again, we go back to the recreational opportunities. There's so many pieces to that, which of course feed into the economic development piece, but you know, whether it's exercise, you know, or kayaking, or, you know, whatever your thing is, you know, the opportunities are they're just endless. They really are.
Yeah, very very well said. I think that you can see this too. I mean, in the conversations that you have, certainly, but even just to drive down the back roads on any given sunny day, and the cyclists that make Lake Simcoe kind of their end point, right? So it's this is a destination for many reasons and for many pursuits.
For sure, yeah. We just hosted the Georgina Marathon again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was quite a feather in our cap, you know, working with them. And, you know, it's a Boston Marathon qualifier. Like, who would have thought that we would have something like that?
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, and I was actually in it this year with a group of my colleagues. From
I didn't realize that. How did it go?
Well, I got to be again. We're going to do the honesty thing.
I appreciate that.
It was walking, like half marathon walking, like literally the only people walking. But
I'm not one to judge over on this side of the table, Dave. So that's good for you,
dude. No way I'm running it. Like, this is not going to happen. And yeah. So, but, you know, hey, I was proud to do it and all that. But, you know, what I found was really cool about it was, you know, I sort of stayed at the finish line there for a bit of time, and, you know, speaking to the organizers and all that. And the amount of people I saw crossing the finish line, first of all, it's incredible. You know, these people are doing full marathons, running and stuff. But, you know, they have geotags on their numbers. And so there's an announcer that'll, you know, if someone comes through the finish line, they'd be like, hey, it's Dave Neeson from Willow Beach, you know, and, you know, for each corresponding person as they come through the gates. And I couldn't believe where some of these people were from, you know, Rochester, Buffalo, Florida, Boston, you know, Cochrane, Ontario.
That's so cool.
Kapuskasing. Like, I couldn't believe it. So, you know, I'd go over and talk to a few. I'm like, hey, you know, how do you like it? Have you ever been here? And they're like, no, man, but, you know, this is like this is a marathon on the lake. You don't get to do this much. Wanted to qualify for the Boston Marathon. Learned about these cool hoteliers you had, you know, the Briars.
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, that's really cool, you know?
That's great. A very, a really good example in terms of, spreading the word of Georgina, getting other people excited, and making it, again, a little bit less of a well-kept secret. And I'm okay with that. And I just think it's great. I think the more people that can enjoy this town, I think it lifts the whole boat, in my opinion. But if people did want to discover a little bit more about the lake or things to do involving the lake, what's the best resource to point them in the right direction, in your opinion, Dave?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe it's a selfless plug here. I don't know. Like, is Georgina synonymous with Dave now? I don't know, but the Town of Georgina website for sure. I mean, there's lots of others, but I got to plug the town. The work the Town of Georgina and the public servants and staff there. They've done a great job on the tourism landing page and
perfect
the Discover Georgina page and the guides and all that. And the chamber's a great partner with ensuring that those things get out there.
Absolutely.
So, I definitely say those are the best. And of course, we've got, local tourist information centers and the chamber as well. And those are all great sources of information. So if you want sort of electronic, or, there's lots of individuals that prefer, in person, and they want to have a brochure in their hand, we offer both for sure.
That's great. Okay. Well, I appreciate the awareness. Now, I do want to talk about conservation and protection of the lake. And I mentioned before, I know this is a topic that you're passionate about, and I'm sure we could go further back, but I do want to start. You mentioned TVO a few moments ago, and I wanted to start with a TVO Today episode that was in the spring of last year entitled, "Should Lake Simcoe Be Treated Like a Great Lake?" And you were part of the panel in that discussion. And can I ask, why was it important to ask that question from your perspective?
Yeah. So the, how do I do an elevator pitch here? No one wants to hear a politician ramble on, but the truth is, so, with respect to the Great Lake question very specifically is, the federal government was coming up with a freshwater action fund.
Yeah.
And, initially in their, in this case, the Liberal Party of Canada, within their policy documents, because I'm a bit of a nerd and like to go through these things, so I can sort of understand.
You're a policy wonk, would you say?
I guess, it's really like boring, isn't it? But yeah, I don't know. I sort of enjoy those things and sort of get to know the interest of others and sort of, how can we do what we can, get the best for our community. And so, the Freshwater Action Fund, pardon me, was being proposed as, of course, there's international obligations and treaties with the United States, and so that was being proposed, that specific fund for the Great Lakes, and we all appreciate for sure that there's issues there and they need to be dealt with, and international obligations for sure, which are also equally important, no doubt about it, with the United States, but. So the question for me really was, okay, we need access to these funds as well. We got to, create a priority here for Lake Simcoe. And so how do we make Lake Simcoe a national priority in that conversation? Right. And so I sort of thought, the best way to do that is going to be a really uphill battle. But we've got, great stats on our side. It's the biggest lake outside of the Great Lakes here in Ontario, as an example. And Ontario's a very large province, we all know. And so I thought, we got to get it. It won't be defined as a Great Lake, but I got to get it in their Great Lakes policy, and get Lake Simcoe put in there, under an other category or something.
Talk about a worthwhile endeavor, Dave. I mean, this is I don't know. This might be a legacy project. This sounds like a great one. Yeah,
maybe. I hope so. I mean, we both have young kids, right? So if we can leave things in a better place for them, and they can pick it up and value the things that are important here in the community and for them, then, that's awesome. So, so that's what the TVO show was about, I guess, Steve Bacon had sort of, and his staff has sort of said, this is kind of a, maybe a David and Goliath situation here. It kind of is like, when you look at Lake Simcoe juxtaposed to Lake Superior, or Lake Ontario, especially just the international borders. And, but we were fortunate, and we were able to get it included at the end of the day. Yeah,
I think that's awesome. And that was kind of my follow-up, because it was just a few months later. I think it was July 2023. There was a great article in the Georgina Advocate that addressed the new federal funding for the cleanup and protection of Lake Simcoe. And the significance of this moment was that Lake Simcoe was in fact given national priority, right up there with the Great Lakes. I have to imagine that felt pretty good. And can I ask though, maybe what was the primary focus of the funding?
So I mean, it's generally speaking, I mean, there's lots of forms that it can take in terms of like a mitigation effort, but it's generally It's generally about phosphorus reduction and or
Yeah,
removals,
the big
right?
one. That's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the eutrophication's the biggest issue here in Lake Simcoe. Probably second place would be salt, different subject, but yeah, I mean, phosphorus is a good thing. It allows life to grow here, but too much of a good thing, like anything else,
Right.
Too many beers is a bad thing too. Well,
Yeah.
too much phosphorus is a bad thing as well,
Yeah.
right? And it chokes out the the oxygen in the lake, and of course, it's it can lead to toxic algae blooms, fish die off, climate change, there's a whole myriad of issues that come with that, and so toxic algae blooms obviously that's critical.
Yeah.
We've seen them here in the past, and so so that's the main driver of it, and so again, it can take different forms. Shoreline stabilization, stormwater runoff. There's mechanical solutions. The other sort of unique partnership we were able to get done with the Fed on top of the Clean Water Action Fund, the 16 million for a potentially natural and mechanical solution working together for a phosphorus recycling facility.
Yeah, I was reading.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's as good as it was to read the article, Dave. It's really nice to talk about this in person. I believe this is a really important topic that impacts us all, both those who live here and those who visit this region. Now, in the article that I referenced a moment ago, your colleague Jonathan Scott, a Bradford West Gwillimbury councillor, he emphasized the importance of this development, but also stressed that the real gains don't come from the announcement or even when you put a shovel in the ground. It comes when you open the facilities to support these efforts. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you give us a status update on these developments? Like, how are things going at this stage?
Yeah, no, good question. I mean, Councillor Scott in Bradford West Gwillimbury, just an outstanding leader in his own right, for sure. And I couldn't do it without him. But if he was here, the truth of the matter is, yes, we did spearhead it and sort of try and create this local coalition. Surrounding the lake, focused upon citizens, environmental groups, members of council, all, of course, it can't just be me lobbying for these things and sort of trying to create that voice for Lake Simcoe. But, he would say 100% it's the citizens. That's really what this is about, bringing together people in nonpartisan nature, let's work together to find a solution. Let's bring our community together. And that's really how it happened. But in terms of the status update. So long and the short is I know that a consulting agency was retained by the province of Ontario, and they're looking at, options for on the capital side to create this facility, what it'll look like from a naturalized perspective, and a mechanicalized perspective. And, how do those two things integrate, if at all? And then, based on that, there's also the land to be considered, right? And so I know that there's been various proposals over the year, whether it's to be located in King, and that's sort of the, the prime opportunity with the best opportunity for phosphorus capture, or on the East Gwillimbury side, or because it's sort of almost a triangle there, or the Bradford side. And so, so as far as I know, that design work, has been undertaken. I think that's probably sitting with the cabinet members at the provincial government level, and they'll judge that against the federal and provincial funds that have been committed, which is 50 million, and they're going to have to consider, based on those design, the operational costs as well, because there'll be an ongoing cost to operate it. Now there'll be a cost recovery with respect to the recycling component for sure. But so as far as I know, they're going to be making a decision there shortly, I think, and I'm hoping that information would probably come out shortly thereafter. With some level of public consultation, right? And feedback opportunities. So
great.
So I think there's something imminent there, but I am hoping to get an update.
That's great. No, I appreciate that. And like I said, this is a huge step in the right direction. I have to imagine feels pretty good to get those kind of results. First from the status and the announcement of the funding. This is a good news story. So I mean, the source of it not so positive that we have to sort of put these efforts forth. But I mean, I think this is great that we're moving in the right direction. And I had another question about any other threats to the health and security of the lake that we should be aware of. You did actually foreshadow mention a moment ago, maybe salt. What other threats should we be concerned about?
I mean, salt, with the studies the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority is doing, that's quickly on the rise as, becoming one of the more predominant threats. Definitely a second behind phosphorus, and at some point may overtake it. According to some of the research they're doing, and so. The basics of it really is, in the day, we all know it's fresh water, and Lake Simcoe is fresh water, which is a good thing. We don't want great white sharks floating around Lake Simcoe, but, try a little my attempt at humor, but, but the salt runoff is affecting the lake. And, there is a point where it can be toxic to the lake, and again, there's no effective way to take it out. And so the more and more we're continuing to put in, again, is
there's a tipping point potentially there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's definitely a close second. Now there's lots of mitigation efforts sort of going on. And to me, that's really the key, is that we know that development pressures are going to continue, pressures on the lake. They can, and they put pressures on, on every component of a municipality, whether it's your drinking water systems, your road networks, your community centers, your pools, whatever the case may be, development always has an impact.
Yeah.
And, I guess the real issue in this particular case is that, there has to be compensatory offset infrastructure when you're going to conduct these sorts of development activities. And so, but the thing, I guess, at the end of the day, that Lake Simcoe is certainly doing better with these, relationships and stuff like that we're creating in the policy and funding frameworks, is that, we have to continue down that path, because no one has really considered the lake in that way.
Yeah. Well, David, maybe that's an opportunity for me to clarify and have you speak a little bit more about the role of the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority and what that plays in this. Can you tell us just a little bit about that? And I recognize that it's obviously made up of not just Georgina residents, people that are in this region or the region of Lake Simcoe. Perhaps I'll turn it over to you, though.
Yeah, I mean, long and the short of the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority is, they... their mandates keep moving, quite frankly, with, the pace at which the government continues to legislate and create policy change. I think they would probably, I guess they can't say they'd be frustrated, but I'll say it. It seems to change and be a moving target. But, at the end of the day, flood mitigation, flood risk, monitoring watershed health, generally speaking, is sort of their mandate and role. We're very fortunate. We have Mayor Quirk here.
Yeah, of course, she's a board member, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and she's actually a former chair too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, way before my time. Maybe I'm dating the mayor. If she hears this, I'm going to be in big
Nobody's
trouble.
Doing math. Nobody's doing math.
There you go. Yeah. So that's all good. Yeah. So she, she'd probably actually be a great guest to bring on the show. She certainly has more knowledge about the authority than I do. But they for sure, their monitoring group is critical, and their environmental expertise as well, especially in the context. Of planning, albeit some of that's, being taken away from them with some provincial legislation here. Their role there is critical. Even at the town, we don't have the expertise necessarily, especially on major development applications,
right,
to evaluate sort of environmental impact, but they do.
Yeah, and I would think that, like, in the context of the lake, I mean, it can't just be a Georgina effort anyway. It has to be. It has to be all of the. I mean, it's an ecosystem that obviously is contingent. The health of which is contingent upon all of the bordering communities of that lake, right?
For sure. Yeah. Just even like one thing there, you're right. Whether it's on the expertise perspective or especially looking at the outcomes, and the Conservation Authority obviously has a huge role there, regardless of the changing mandates. But just say, and we were talking about earlier, you just even look at us as citizens, right? And what we can do just as residents, and you broaden that out to the ENGOs or environmental groups that are out there, whether it's Jack Gibbons, the work he does with Lake Simcoe Watch, or, Claire Malkinson, amazing dedicated woman there in the work that she does with Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition.
Yeah.
You've got Margaret Prophet on the other side of the lake with Simcoe County Greenbelt. And so, I guess all I'm trying to demonstrate there or say is that, and it's a novel approach, I think most people would agree upon, is that, and when I say nonpartisan, I think that's what's critical, is let's just drop all the pretense and all this partisan stuff, but to your point, and you said it quite right, is that we all have to come together, whether it's the environmental groups, the citizens, the public service, the politicians, all of that. And let's just look at the impacts and most importantly, the outcomes. What outcomes are we desirous of, and how do we get there? And let's just forget about, all the bickering, and let's just focus upon that. And that's what's important to people, to you and I and our children and everyone else, right? That's what we should be doing.
I agree. I mean, I think that, there's an existential element here. I think it's bigger than all of us, and it requires that approach. And maybe I'll use that as a natural segue to kind of ask what the average citizen, or maybe even visitor for that matter, to our area can do to support the health of the lake. You kind of spoke to about a couple of organizations there as well, but I'm just curious to anyone that's listening to the podcast and that want to be mindful of this and do their small part. Is anything come to mind?
Yeah, for sure. There's the big and the small, but the small stuff really adds up. And, I think that's the most important. So, when we talk about phosphorus, to sort of break that down to something that's understandable for everyone, if that's sort of confusing, for the most part, it's fertilizer. And, so let's be mindful, and use fertilizers. Some are available. Yes, there may be a little bit of an increased cost, but there's biodegradable fertilizers out there. We all want to have nice, manicured lawns for those that, let's face it, everyone has different tastes. If that's your taste, hey, that's great. We've got a huge industry here, quite frankly, in the town of sod. And so one of the biggest private employers, right?
Yeah, good point.
Right? Yeah, for sure. And so, we have to support them as well. And, it's probably a conversation for a different day, because, government hasn't necessarily supported the ag sector, whether it's them or others, in terms of, what's required with them. But on a smaller resident scale, just something simple like that, we can take actions like that. On the salt side, same thing, the Conservation Authority has some great diagrams you can pull off their website. We need to do a much better job at the town, and we're looking at that now through some committee work and others, is getting some of these, getting some of these correspondence out. I mean, we send communications through tax bills. Nobody likes a tax bill, but hey, wouldn't it be cool if we just sort of said, hey, this square footage in the winter, this is really all the salt you need. We recognize, of course, the health and safety issue. You don't want to be falling in your driveway, all that sort of stuff.
That's great.
And so, yeah, it's necessary, but using less and understanding what's effective, and I don't have the measurement in front of me, but, a teaspoon over, a 4x4 area is just effective of, dumping 3 coffee cups or whatever the case may be. So there's just small things like that.
Hey, these are good points of awareness. And to your point, the small things that can make a big difference, like if you're mindful of them, right? So if we operate sort of haphazardly, assuming that we know what's best, we know what the consequences can be. So just simple guidance like that can make a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. And I just haven't subscribed to, there's some people that would say, hey, look, man, don't use salt at all. Like, it's bad. Let's not do it. Let's not use salt. Let's, I don't know. We'll go out and use an ice scraper. Well, like, if that's your thing, like, that's cool. Like, do whatever works for you. That's cool. Like, some people, I want a naturalized front lawn. That's great, but it doesn't suit everyone. We got to make sure we're, again, we're rowing in the same direction. So when it doesn't work for someone, that's reasonable. And so let's help people make good choices, right?
Yeah.
And those are just simple little things, right?
All right. It's really well said. Okay. Now, I've got one last question. I appreciate you giving me so much of your time, first of all, Dave. Happy to. But let's bring it back to your personal connection.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite memory of the lake that you could share with us? A good note to end on, I think.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? I have a lot, quite frankly. I'd like to say it's sort of like give you an inspirational one, childhood or something like that. But we're being authentic and legitimate. So, I do, for sure. And, so, I'm a snowmobiler as well, and I don't get snowmobile much anymore with lifestyle and stuff, and certainly not here, we know, with climate change and stuff like that in the lake. But I do have a really proud moment, that really stuck with me, and again speaks to the level of the public service here and how fortunate we are with with what we do have, And so I was out, with a couple of friends there, and we were sort of coming out of Cook's Bay, and we were on our snowmobiles, and back then they staked the lake and staked the trail, and so we were out in the trail, and as coming out of Cook's Bay there, it's you sort of go pretty far out from shore, and anyway, long story short, something kind of caught my eye, and it was really far off, and something just caught my eye sort of in towards shore, and I thought, that's there was some color, and I thought, that's really strange. What is that? And so, something triggered me to go way, way off course and go and take a look. And, and I did. And, I found this gentleman who, had appeared he'd hit a pressure crack. He was really badly hurt. He was unconscious.
Oh, wow.
And the thing is, it was right before dark, and it was literally going to be dark, pitch black out in that lake, and 20 minutes. And I thought, oh man, this is not good. And so was able to sort of wake the guy up and, assist him being, immobilize him and try and keep him calm and, provide for first aid. And I had, my buddies sort of race into shore and, call 911. Let's see if we can get a house address to tell people where to get to. And, yeah. And I don't know, man, I guess it's a weird story, but
that's wild.
Yeah, we're just
positive
lucky.
Ending. Great ending.
Yeah, it was.
I imagine that second half of that story when you showed up, that was probably one of his favorite memories when he saw you guys.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, if he's listening to the show, I still want all my Under Armour gear back from treating him for shock, right? Because I never got that back because the paramedics duct taped it all around him, and I thought, oh man, there goes all my ice fishing gear. Geez. That's okay, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so they landed the helicopter and got that guy out of there, and it just, it's one of those memories. The reason I raise it is, what I know for sure is that, here, in the Lake Simcoe watershed, and certainly bringing it back home here to Georgina, these are things we do for people. Yeah. Right. And without hesitation. Yeah. And, I don't know the individual. I don't need to know him. But I know somebody would do that for me. And I know that whether or not we're neighbors on a street, is that we do those sorts of things for each other. Yeah. And, this guy recovered, and they took him away in the helicopter actually, but it's small things like that, right? But for a little bit of kindness, there might have been a devastating situation there.
No question.
But I'm no different than anybody else here, and this is what we do for one another.
This is a really good one to end on, and especially for a podcast that's about community pride, supporting your community, and feeling good about where you live. So thanks very much for sharing that one, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah, and let me use this as an opportunity to thank you once again for the generous investment in time, for your service on town council, but also in the context of this episode, for the extensive efforts and the great work that you have done and continue to do for the lake that we love. Thank you again.
Thank you. And likewise, thank you to you as well, Rob, for all you're doing.
Well, Ben, another one in the can, as they say. What did you think of our interview with Dave?
It was great. It's good to get to know one of our counselors, is just for what he's done for the town, but also what he's done for the lake. It's fantastic to hear that.
Yeah, I think so. I guess I should pause for a moment and celebrate this. With you, a big feather in our cap that we got our first counselor on the YourTown Georgina podcast. My hope is it's the maybe the first of many.
I think so.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's interesting to hear, obviously, about his efforts with the town, how he came to become a counselor, but very much in the context of this episode, learn a little bit more about his efforts to support the health of Lake Simcoe. Came at it from a variety of different angles. There's a number that he shared with us that kind of jumped out at me, and that was the impact from a tourism perspective, or what the lake brings in collectively. Now, this wasn't just a Town of Georgina number, but it came to a value of about $923 million.
That was shocking. Yeah.
Big number, right? Yeah. And I think that, beyond that, we talked a little bit about, the importance of the lake in terms of the residents here. And obviously that word identity came up multiple times, and something that I've certainly alluded to. And I think that it's very much in my bones. Really, I feel the lake. It's a part of what home means to me, and I think that I speak for a lot of other people, new residents and long timers that could probably share that sentiment.
Absolutely, as you said, if the lake wasn't here, Georgina wouldn't be either.
Yeah, very well put. I also found it interesting to learn a little bit more about the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority and some of the important work that they do. But I was very interested in Dave's efforts towards achieving the Great Lake status of Lake Simcoe. And I might be misrepresenting that slightly, but in terms of achieving that status and what that meant, that recognition of Lake Simcoe as such an important body of watershed, and obviously the resulting funds that are flowing in because of that, kind of a pretty huge win.
Absolutely. That was really impressive. of you can't tie with better lakes than the great ones. So, and to be seen on par with them is fantastic. That is truly a good, big win.
Yeah, I really didn't know much about the phosphorus problem until I started looking into things a little bit more for this episode, and obviously talking to Dave. But I think one of the important outcomes of a lot of these episodes is some of the things that we can do as residents to support the health of the lake. He mentioned that salt was a big one, and potentially might pass phosphorus as one of the major threats to the health and the balance of Lake Simcoe.
You can't take it out, as he said.
Yeah,
it's so true.
Yeah, that's right. But again, I want to thank Dave for that. Ben, I want to thank you also for sharing your insights. It's good to get the perspective of somebody that is perhaps I don't want to say a new resident, but a little bit newer resident in terms of what your experiences are with the lake. And
it's my pleasure.
I don't think you have to live here too long to get in your bones, like I was saying before.
That's true.
Yeah, and so I hope you all enjoyed our episode about Lake Simcoe. And remember to subscribe to the Your Town Georgina podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, please rate and review us. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel. This helps us get the word out and build that pride that is the goal of the Your Town Georgina podcast. And with that, let's turn it over to our good friend Bernadette Connors. We'll see you next time.
I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a lady of the lake. I learned to drive on a dirt road, and I got all it takes. I see myself in the water, and my footprints in the sand. The moon can push and pull the tide, but this is where I stand. Georgina, I could never really leave ya. I've been all around the world and still you bring me back again. Georgina, I've got friends in the city, they've got a tower and everything. I tried it out for a little while, but where you don't have roots you can't grow wings. Georgina, I could never really leave ya. I've been all around the world and still you bring me back again. Georgina, when I'm gone I dream ya. Late at night, later on, you're always on my mind. Georgina, should I stay or should I go? I'll always be scared of the great unknown. I see myself in the water, I see myself in the water. Georgina, you know I could never leave ya. I've been all around the world and still you bring me back again. Georgina, oh, do you know how much I need ya? I'll always be a small town girl, you always will be mine. Georgina, 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 I see myself